So I came across this tweet, which led me to this article from Peter Harrigan. And what he's doing here is he's taking PlanB's Stock2Flow model for evaluating high stock-to-flow assets and coming up with a market value projection or extrapolation for them, and he's applying that to U.S. real estate. So one of the issues with the stock-to-flow model, and if you haven't seen my previous video on it, to check that out, it explains the basics, is that the there's very few assets that are high stock-to-flow, simply because most assets are created in order to flow. Right? You want to trade them. You don't want to just build them and hold them. But real estate is a very good example of high stock-to-flow assets, because I mean, on any given year, a very small portion of the total supply of real estate is increased, and also the number of transactions that occur in real estate, for a given year is pretty low compared to the total. So, with that in mind, it makes for a good comparison. So what Harrigan, what Harrigan does here is he goes through the stock-to-flow in terms of square footage, which is kind of interesting. So you can read the article, which I will link to in the notes here. But it comes up with a calculation of a stock-to-flow ratio of 94.8. And that is based on, there being existing 253 billion square feet of residential space, and 2.67 billion was added. So that gives you a ratio of 94.8. Plugging that into the formula that PlanB created, it's $47.8 trillion market value projection. And apparently Zillow has a number of 33.6 trillion. So 33.6 versus 47.8. You might say, well, that's $11 trillion, or not 11, that's $14 trillion difference. But in percentage terms, it's reasonably close when you're dealing with exponential curves here. So 42%, there we go. So I would actually say it's a pretty good number. And he tries to refine that a little bit with value added, owner built space, which is either add-ons or actual housing, and comes up with a number of 28.2 trillion. So again, by 33.6 trillion, that is, it's bracketing that area. So, that's actually a pretty good indication that the true value, so-called, is somewhere in the middle, which is going to match pretty closely with that Zillow estimate. Now, how accurate is Zillow? It's not 100% accurate, but they've got pretty good data, and it's going to be in the ballpark, at least. So then he goes on and applies it to the graph that PlanB created, and that's these guys up here, and it looks like it holds up on the line pretty well. So so in that sense, it is a data point of confirmation that this kind of analysis works. So that's cool. I would like to see this not in square footage terms, but in units, and doing a little bit of that math. So that would be something to check out in the future. And we can say that, there are 904,000 added, 352,000 were added in multifamily, but we don't have the base number that was added to. So I'd have to do some digging, but it could be done. I think not too hard. And I might do that in a future article. But, the thing that got me thinking was that, part of the assumptions of the stock-to-flow modeling is, the relatively high stock to relatively low flow. But what happens when the flow increases for whatever reason? Like, let's say you have a real estate crash or an economic crash and people need to sell their houses. The flow increases beyond what's, normal. And I think what the effect would be to kind of lower this ratio. So instead of 94.8 or 83.4, whatever it is, the you're kind of slipping down this curve. So one thing, or I guess a second thing that I would like to see some analysis done, and if I have time, I'll give it a crack. Would be to see, like, okay, in the '08 financial crisis, we saw real estate dip over the course of 3 or 4 years. What I don't know off the top of my head is how that volume compared to transaction volume and square footage volume in this case, compared to so-called normal times, where if my hypothesis is right, then the lower stock to flow would predict a lower valuation, and if we have the data, then we could go in and see if that was the case, because we know that prices dropped from '08 to 11 or 12 or so. I know I bought my house, this house I'm sitting in right now, in November 2011, and just by dumb luck, it was one of the best purchases I ever made. So the house has gone up 4 times in value since then. Now it might be going back down depending on how the whole COVID thing shakes out. I do think we're going to see some troubles with real estate in the coming year or two, as people need to sell their properties. If their income has reduced or disappeared. No matter what kind of programs you come out with, eventually something needs to be paid. So if you can't pay the bill, then you gotta go. So overall, I mean, it's really interesting to see this analysis applied to housing, and how it does fit reasonably well with actual market values and with the model. So that's another point in support of this whole thing working. And we're 6 days away from the halving in Bitcoin for 2020. And if Plan B is right, then we're going to shift up this curve, and we'll be somewhere up in here, and that equates to a per Bitcoin price of $288,000 according to Plan B's calculations. So will it be exactly 288? Well, no, of course not. But it'll be bouncing around, because the way these data points are selected is kind of the center of coordinate kind of measurement for these clusters. So so we'll be up here as the supply goes down. The flow decreases, which increases the stock to flow ratio, which increases the market value. So that's assuming Bitcoin remains a thing, which I think it will. But we'll see in the next 4 years. I don't know. Although the previous history has been to overshoot sometime in the first year, and then crash back down, and then kind of regain the valuation. So that's something to keep in mind if you're a trader. Yeah, so look out in the future for a little bit of analysis based on changing stock to flows and seeing how that works with observed experience in the '08 financial crisis.